Welcome. This is the last chapter that we're going to be going over. It's chapter 9, Finish and Furniture Selection. And it's probably one of the most important chapters for a interior designer. So I hope you will go through this and be able to really take some time to read the chapter. I'm going to kind of start a little bit about the 1942 fire in Boston's Coconut Grove nightclub, which claimed the lives of like 492 people. And it's responsible for that deadly fire in Boston, which really established, regulated dealing with interior finishes known as the Boston Fire Code. I've got on here a kind of a link, a YouTube that talks about it. So I want you to go back through, download the PowerPoint, and be able to watch this, because you will learn so much about what has happened and what has transpired through the next few years, through nightclubs, nursing homes that have claimed multiple lives because of the interior finishes, the upholstery, furniture, and what the actual cause of a fire is. As I said, interior finishes has been a significant factor in rapid fire spread for many of the deadliest fires. In June of 1989, 5 people died on the floor of origin of a intense, rapid developing fire on the 6th floor of an office building in Atlanta, Georgia. And what had happened, the fire spread so fast the blaze in the corridor had burned itself out by the time the firefighters entered the 6th floor about 7 minutes after the initial alarm. You're going to see that a lot of times it just happens so quickly because interior designers don't go through and specify the non-resistant or fire retardant materials are on the particular finishes that they're supposed to. So we're going to be learning a little bit about Class A, B, C, 1 and 2, so that you'll need to do it. 1986 was the DuPont Plaza Hotel fire, and where 96 people died, and interior finishes in all the ballrooms should have been Class A and B, and they were not. You've heard about the 1981 Las Vegas Hilton Hotel fire. Combustible carpet on walls and ceilings of elevators, lobbies contributed to horizontal fire spread on the floor of origin and vertical spread involving 22 floors, which 8 people died. And then in 1978, the Holiday Inn fire killed 10 people because of lightweight paneling. Plywood paneling was put in the stairway. Somebody, of course, a maintenance person, decided to do that to spruce it up. In 1972, in a nursing home, there were 10 of the 41 patients because of wood paneling, which accelerated the fire spread. So my whole point is, as an interior designer, we have to be very conscious about our finishes that we specify. Wall and ceiling finishes, interior floor finishes, all these are real important, and they're all a part of the interior finishes. Just not your walls and your floors, your ceilings are very important. Requirements pertaining to interior finishes are intended to restrict the spread of the fire over the continuous surface forming the interior portion of a building. So what we're trying to do is not have any particular finish be combustible, and we're also trying to get it to where it doesn't burn. Furnishings, which in some cases may be secured in place for functional reasons, should be considered as an interior finish. Interior wall and ceiling finishes means their exposed interior surfaces of building include, but not limited to, fixed or movable walls and partitions, columns, and ceilings. So kind of how you have to look at it is materials less than 1/28 of an inch thickness applied directly to the surface of the wall or ceiling is not considered as an interior finish. That may be some things like paint or other items, but if it's over 1/28 of an inch, then it is considered a material that we have to be very careful on trying to specify. Such materials have surface burning characteristics that are no greater than paper of this thickness applied directly to a non-combustible backing in the same manner. The faster a fire develops, the greater a threat it represents to the occupants, and the more difficult it is to control, and the harder it is to get people out of the building. Building codes and standards give strict instructions on the selection of these finishes, since finishes often ignite and rapidly spread a fire. Wall coverings that is not flame resistant can spread a fire down the length of an entire corridor in a matter of seconds, setting other flammable items such as draperies and upholsteries on fire and creating deadly smoke, heat, and toxic fumes. There's been a report of a fire where the carpet, of course, was so combustible that it almost burned from the terminal from one end to the other end in about 90 seconds. So it was very hard for people to get out of the way on items like this. Tested building materials given hourly rating represents the amount of time the material can resist a fire. Remember, we've been talking about our components, structural components, 2x4s, what a wall is made out of. But now we're talking about the finishes that are applied to these walls. So finishes and furniture are given fire ratings, but based on the potential of the material, contribute to the overall fire, or contribute to the smoke growth, or contribute to the spread of a fire. Ratings are obtained by smaller scale flame tests, which I'll get into the next video, rather than full scale fire tests. So a lot of times if you're specifying furniture and stuff, you may end up having to have a particular test done on that particular chair or the fabric of it just to see if it meets the needs or that particular code. You should select your finishes and furniture that meets the codes, but it's very critical on this aspect. Let's kind of go over a few terminology. Terminology is used to describe products that are more resistant to fire that has changed over the years. There's things called flame-proof, which is a common term that is usually incorrect since very few products are totally unaffected by fire. Because remember, we talked about certain things may not end up burning, but they may charcoal, they may melt, there's other things. So the correct terms are flame retardant and flame resistant. So kind of start thinking of utilizing those terminologies. There are items that you can put on particular upholstered pieces, the process of called back coating. It's the process of coating the underside of a fabric or finish to improve, of course, its durability, and it enables it to serve as a heat barrier or both. So therefore, the fabric might burn until you get to this back coating, but it's not going to go or let the fire seep into the actual component of the chair before it will kind of stop it. It's called a back coating. There are other things that may be like fire block, same type scenario. It's a separate material used behind or underneath the primary finish or other building material for the purpose of creating what is referenced as a fire barrier. I have kind of put some things in here, so you need to look through and the websites that are on here. Take the time to do that. Flame resistance. Remember, that's a finish or furniture that restricts the spread of a flame when exposed to a flame or non-flaming source. It includes resisting the flame or terminating the flame following ignition. So the room may be in fire, but have a fire going on in it, but the actual product is going to be flame resistant. It's not going to contribute to the fire. It might charcoal, but it's not going to combust. Flame spread. What we're talking about here is the propagation of flame over a surface. We're trying to look at the amount of flame spread during a test condition. You can see here, of course, here is a chair that is totally engulfed in that. So you can see the actual chair is burning. It's flammable when you're looking at it. And let me back up one, because the amount of flame spread during that test, you're going to see that different companies rate if how quickly does the whole chair go into the combustible stage, or if it does or not does, any drippings that go down on the floor, and then how much, of course, smoke does it generate. There are also other liners that you might see, which is kind of a heat barrier. It's a liner used between the upholstery and the filling, because a lot of time in a fire, you're going to see the foam part is what contributes to the fire. So a lot of times what they're doing is putting a heat barrier in here to prevent the spread of a flame or smoldering heat. It's applied, it's kind of like the back coating. And a lot of times this is kind of the same fabric that you might see on a fireman. So interior finish, that includes wall, ceiling finishes, and floor finishes. It does not include trim. So what is a trim? You know, we've kind of talked about. Remember, we have baseboards, chair rails, ceiling moldings, trim around your doors. Those are trims, and the interior finish does not dictate that. So when I talk about, sometimes you may have mock-up furniture, a representation of a finished piece of furniture that utilizes the same frame and the filling and the upholstery as the finished piece. It can be a full or partial mock-up. And so what it's doing is you've got to send, they do testing on a piece. So if a new product of a furniture line has come out, you will see that they will test it. That's why a lot of your own furniture companies end up having selected finishes that meet that particular flammability. So if you want to have COM, customers own material, then you may end up having to send your fabric there so they can do a mock-up or a partial mock-up to see if it's going to meet the same standards that they have already. Smoldering. That's combustion that occurs without a flame, that generates smoke, toxic gases, and heat. It usually results in a charred area. This kind of came into being, especially when we had so many smokers and people would set their cigarette, go to sleep, and then things would start smoldering in an upholstered chair. And then you would end up, of course, seeing where the chair would be totally inflamed, and someone who fell asleep in their chair could, of course, die from the toxic gases of that particular fabric. Now, remember when I talked about the MGM, that's why so many people died. So if you go back and Google a lot of times what happened at the MGM, that's because of the upholstery in the vinyl that's used. The toxic gases is what killed everybody, because the booths started burning, and the toxic gases got into the HVAC duct system, and so there was no dampers to be able to block it or close it off. So what is a trim? Remember, we talked about picture molds, chair rolls, baseboards, handrails, doors, and window frames, and similar decorative or protective materials used, and it's always fixed application, so it's attached to the wall. So there's different types of finishes in furniture. Remember, I keep saying there's interior ceiling finishes, there are wall finishes, there are floor finishes, there are window treatments, there's furnishings that have finishes, and there's furniture. So when we talk about interior ceiling finishes, that could be, of course, a fixed ceiling that you might see in a residential home, that it may have sheetrock or jet board, and it may be painted. Or you might even have a drop-in ceiling. It's the exposed interior surface of a building, including suspended ceiling grids and coverings that can be applied to fixed and movable ceilings, soffit, beams, space, frames, and other similar elements. If it has to be, of course, fire rated, you'll notice that you see the man in the corner there. Those particular tiles have to be clipped in place, because a lot of times you can look and there may be a gap at the corner if you look up if you're in a commercial building, and so you've got to clip it in place so that the fire and smoke doesn't seep through the crevices. Then you have interior wall finishes. Remember, there's all types of finishes that are out there. It's exposed interior surfaces of a building, including coverings that may be applied or over fixed or movable walls and partitions, columns, and other similar elements. Then you have interior floor finishes. Exposed interior surfaces of building, including coverings that may be applied over finished or unfinished floor, stairs, including risers, ramps, or other similar elements. So you might have, you see in the example here, a tile floor, wood floor, carpet. We go up the stairs, we have wood and carpet. We might have resilient type flooring in the kitchen area. So it includes all of those elements that is attached to the subflooring. And that subflooring, of course, could be a wood subflooring, or it could be a concrete floor. Window treatments. Those are decorative elements that control the amount of light from a window area. They include draperies, liners, blinds, shutters. These can be made, remember, of textiles, wood, vinyl, or other similar materials. If a drapery covers more than 10% of the wall area, it's considered an interior finish by many codes. So if we have a drapery and it goes across the whole floor, now, across the whole wall, the drapery does, then of course it's going to be a wall finish. But if it does, you have one window and it's a small room, and if it does more than 10% of that wall area, length times the width, then it's considered an interior finish. Some states and cities require that a certificate must be provided for all flame retardant fabrics that are used, and that all flame retardant chemicals used must be approved by the state fire marshal. So that means sometimes you will find that you can have fabrics and it's not flame retardant, but you can put a coating on it, send your fabric off to a company and have a coating putting over it, and that means that flame retardant chemicals has to be approved by the state fire marshal. This happens all the time in commercial settings. So these are things that you as an interior designer need to know and can possibly do. Furnishings and finishes. That's, of course, exposed finishes found in case goods, furniture, system furniture, soft seating such as fabrics, wood veneers, and laminates. This category also includes non-exposed finishes such as the foam in the seating, the liners in the drapery, and other similar elements. So these are things that you have to consider. All of these are assembled together, and they have to, of course, be flame resistant. So we're talking about furniture, whole pieces of furniture rather than separate parts and pieces. This category includes upholstery products such as seating, panel systems, mattresses. You may have, which consist of the whole mattress composition, including the fabric, the padding, the coils, and similar bedding assemblies. What goes on top? You've got your sheets, and you've got, of course, the bed linens that goes in your bedspreads. So to kind of understand, you're going to have different stages of a fire development. And this is kind of in your textbook, and you need to be aware of that. The first is where it ignites. That's the first stage, the initial growth of a fire. Usually smoke's produced in this stage. It travel many feet for the room and pose a threat to humans. That's why, of course, remember, smoke rises, and we want to make sure that we have our activation systems, our fire alarms and stuff will go off. Stage 2 means the growth of the stage when the fire begins to ignite materials. You might have a trash can that's burning, or the Christmas tree that's burning, and all of a sudden now the furniture and the finishes that are right next to it start getting consuming in the fire. So it's a large part of the room. It's heat generated. And so when you get all this heat, sometimes it's called what it is, a flashover. So that's when a fire reaches at least 1200 degrees. And in one room, it's going to just flash over into another room because that heat is built up so much, it's got to push and go somewhere else. Stage 3 is when the fire is fully developed, causing the entire building to quickly become dangerous. There's smoke, heat, toxic gases, possible structural collapse, and harm those who remain within the range. Now, a lot of people say, oh, that will take a while, but the first 5 to 10 minutes of fire are the most critical, and a lot of times the materials and finishes either can contribute to the growth or prevent the spread of the fire. So that's where we as interior designers come into play to make sure that that doesn't happen. So this is the development of fire. It is a YouTube video. I want you to download it and watch it because this will help you understand a little bit about fires. So I hope this helps you. I know it's a 21-minute video that I've just put out, but kind of go through each of those. So I hope you enjoy. Please read the chapter and take the time.